Well, it looks like it is another live stream.
Yes.
I'm so excited. We are talking all about the best man today, as you guys know. First, before we even get going, please let us know if you can hear me clearly. Make sure that everything is working, and drop in the chat where you're watching us from. We would love to shout some of y'all out where you're coming from. But before we get too far, do let us know if it sounds good. Give me a thumbs up in the live. Hey, I see some people showing up. What's going on? Y'all made a live. We are live, in fact, absolutely. Before I get going, Britt, I gotta let them meet you first. Can you tell everyone who you are and why you're here?
Well, my name is Brittany, but my channel is For the Nostalgia, where I recap classic 90s and 2000s content from a millennial perspective, I guess you can say. I'm here because my subscribers have been begging and begging and begging and pleading for me to do the best man. So I was grateful enough, or I was able to do it finally, even though NBC Universal be hating. I was finally able to do it. So I definitely wanted to join with Tiffany to discuss it and just have a little fun.
Absolutely. And I see there are so many people, Brittany, all over. We got Pittsburgh in the house. We have Texas. I saw Detroit, Michigan in the house, watching from Maryland. And I'm glad the thumbs up. They're letting me know that the sound is good. So thank you guys so much. I see some fans of Brittany here. I also adore you, Brittany. I adore your channel. I adore your videos and your reviews. And just so you guys know who I am, I'm Tiffany. And I also make content around media messaging. So really using the movies we watch, the movies that we love. And a big part of my heart is to really break down the messages that we're receiving from media, because I believe that entertainment is so prolific, profound. It helps you, it grows you, but it can also consume you if you're not careful. So huge fan of that. I see some San Diego. We got Chi-Town in the house, Chicago, London, UK. What's going on all the way from overseas? Thank you guys so much for being here, for loving on Brittany, and for joining us. Let's jump into this conversation. Okay, Brittany, disclaimer at the top. This is grown folks conversation, okay?
Yes.
We are discussing heavy themes. We are discussing identity, sexuality, parenting. We're discussing all kinds of issues within the community. And so I just want to encourage you, if you have little ones around, make sure you put them to bed or put them away. But get to bed, okay? But get ready to be challenged, because I do think this is a conversation, and this movie is a great context for so much of life, love, and relationships. So first things first, Brittany, let's talk about The Best Man. Let's give a little synopsis, a little quick, sweet, and I always put you on the spot with this. Because your videos are so good at recapping the movie, can you tell everybody The Best Man in a really couple sentences? What is it all about?
Well, The Best Man is about a guy. His name is Harper. He is about to come out with a new book that he based on his friend group that he don't want them to read. And so the book has all these, juicy details of him having a situation with one of his friend's girlfriends. Now, the friend group doesn't quite know if, what's going on, if it's true or not, but they kind of know that it's about them. So throughout the movie, we just see everyone's reaction to learning the truth, what happened, and we get to see the madness that comes along with that.
Madness. Absolute madness. And, I want to echo what Brittany said about NBC Universal, who owns the rights to this film. It was very difficult to get a review or a video up on our channels because of how copyright issues work. And so if you have watched Brittany's recap video, first of all, it's amazing. If you haven't, go ahead and check that out, and go to her channel after this to go watch it. I just dropped my video yesterday about the same movie. And I want to start off with the synopsis. I want to start off with Harper and Lance. I think we have to discuss the ensemble of characters, Brittany, but let's start with Harper. Harper. Okay. Harper feels like a literary callback to HarperCollins, which is, I believe, a publisher, right, for books. So Harper shows up in that first scene, Brittany, and he arrives to this brownstone apartment from a cab, and he's greeted by Robin, who is played by Sanaa Lathan, with Harper by Taye Diggs. Now, what are your first impressions of this scene? What do you kind of see? What do you get from it?
I noticed pretty quickly that, I was about to say Sanaa, Robin was more into him than he was into her. And it was like very apparent. You couldn't mistake it. Like he was like very obvious with it. And it just flew over her head, or at least she just wanted to believe she can change him maybe. But that was like very obvious within like their first two scenes. Like their dynamic wasn't it at all.
Absolutely. I think the thing I noticed immediately, especially after watching this after so many years, I noticed that Harper comes in and he starts adjusting stuff that she's moved around, right? So like, I guess she's kind of maybe taken over his space. Maybe she's moved in there with him, her stuff. And you see Harper just like putting things back in the right place and putting his books together.
He didn't want her there at all.
He didn't want her there. And I was so aware. I think anytime you see a couple where it's clear that one person is more interested than the other person, it kind of sticks out like a sore thumb, because it just seemed like as soon as he came in, he told her, hey, Oprah is going to, push my book. She's going to promote my book in her book club. But you could tell, even though she is also celebrating a business, a client, a catering, it seemed like she immediately was like all about Harper. And I noticed that the dynamic of their relationship is probably that Harper is always the one in front. He's always the one that gets the attention, the praise, the admiration. But for Robin, she was kind of playing second fiddle to his work and to his dreams. Yeah. And I noticed that the first
maybe he's used to people feeding into him. Like maybe he's used to people feeding into him more so him doing it for others.
Well, that's going to foreshadow for later, because as we move from that scene, we get into the pivotal scene of their relationship, right? We have the bathtub, flower petals in the water. First of all, that whole setup, I was already looking at it like as a production person. I was like, no. People ain't put that together in a couple of hours. Okay, who did y'all hire to drop who came in there to drop all this?
And then it's like perfectly laid, like perfect.
Fire hazard. Their lease didn't allow it. I can tell you right now, I was like, if this is supposed to be Chicago brownstone, it's not giving that. But they get in their tub and they're having this conversation, and Robin is talking, and she says to Harper, she says, you know, we could be like this forever. And Harper says, what? And
Absolutely
he's like
not.
mortified by the idea of forever.
Mm-hmm.
Child, don't let nobody tell you they don't want you more than once.
I mean, in your face.
Don't let nobody tell you they don't want you more than once.
She was like, forever. I can see forever with you. He was like, no, not really. Like, the feeling is not mutual.
The feeling is not mutual. And he literally said, she says, do you love me? And he says, yeah.
What did he say?
But it's not that simple.
That simple. Yeah, not that simple. Like, what you mean? I need you to elaborate.
Right. I'm gonna need some more words behind that. And then she's sitting there, she goes, it's simple to me. And he says nothing.
Nothing.
Silence.
Just awkward silence. So awkward that she got up.
She got out of the tub and said, okay, that's all I needed to hear. And I really thought to myself, this is how they start the movie. I thought to myself, I said, myself said, I said, self, this looks a little too common. This looks a little too familiar. Because how often, whether you're a man or a woman, how often do you allow someone to reject or disrespect you in your face? And you have to now go deal with your feelings on your own because this person is not emotionally capable or competent to be able to handle you. I think that's a really big lesson for many of us who are in that grown stage that are having relationships, you know? So, yes. Moving on, let's talk about when he actually gets picked up by Murch. Okay, Big Murch. What's his real name? His real name is something else.
Julian.
What's his real name? Julian.
Murch. Yeah.
Julian's a blabbermouth. So he picks up Harper from the airport in New York City, and he says to him, "Hey, man, just so you know, Jordan's got your book."
Yeah.
Jordan's got your book. Now, I thought it was interesting to watch this. What'd you say?
I said, what you mean? She got my book. Like, he was just so in shock.
Just shocked. But we just found from the previous scene that Oprah is going to be promoting your book in her book club once it publishes next month. And you're going to the wedding to be the best man in your best friend's wedding. And Murch is letting you know, hey, the book has made the rounds. The very book that's about the friend group you about to go see.
Yeah.
Child. Messy. Messy.
That you don't want them to read.
That you don't want them to read. Now, let me I want to ask the audience a question real quick. Okay, so if y'all are watching, hi, welcome. Make sure that you like the video. Make sure you thumbs it up. If you're watching this, have you guys ever had an inside joke or an inside, tip about your friend group that only you and maybe one other person knows? And then it gets out? Please tell us your comments because I want to read it like it's Reddit. I want to read it aloud in front of everybody because I think there's something to that. And I'm going to check in with the comments, see what you guys are talking about here. He said, Robin should have knew then that Harper wasn't the one. Exactly, Joshua. It don't take that long.
Very obvious.
Very obvious. And I think that's the problem with red flags is that they are obvious. They're too obvious, I think. Sometimes, and this is my own opinion. Sometimes I think we see red flags in relationships or with people, and we assume, well, let me give them a little bit more time, right? Because that might have just been a bad impression. That might have been,
I can change them.
I can change them.
Yeah.
They didn't mean that, right? We be making up excuses for people in our heads that they haven't actually given us. And to be fair, I think there is grace that's extended when someone says something or fumbles their words. But that was not a fumble. It was very clear.
Very clear.
He don't want to commit to her.
Yeah. She's not the one for him.
Not the one. And then, Dejanay says, we as women need to hear right the first time. I actually heard a conversation, I think it was a podcast or something, Britt, where somebody was talking about or it was men, it was all men. And they were saying that women say they want to hear our feelings, but they don't listen. Like when we say, I'm feeling this or I'm feeling that, the women are not listening because they don't like what they hear. What do you think of that?
I understand that like sometimes you may be with a person and like you're all about them. So it may hurt to hear that they don't feel the same about you. However, like long-term happiness is way better than short-term, like fake love or whatever, like a short-term situation. Like long-term happiness, long-term like mental health, because being with somebody that doesn't want you can lead you to experience other things. So it's best to just deal with it and move on. You could be keeping yourself away from a lot by just accepting it from the get-go. And that's from personal experience.
Okay, right. Hello, we're gonna tell the truth on today's live. I think that's really the challenge of all the characters, and we're gonna talk about even Murch here for just a moment, because Murch, we find out obviously that he's in a relationship with Shelby, and Shelby is she's insufferable. Shelby is kind of the trope of the controlling, kind of manipulative, like girlfriend. And frankly, I think she's that way because Murch just bows at her feet, right? He's worshiping at the shrine of Shelby. And so he don't have no agency or any type of personality in his relationship. But I think to the point of him wanting to grab Harper and ask Harper in this next scene about what him and Jordan's connection was like and why they never got together. First of all, why is this man gossiping? That's what I want to know.
I know. He just wanted all of the tea, all of it. He can't hold it at all. Like, he gonna spill it everywhere.
This man wants to gossip. So they go to Jordan's job, right? And they're at, I believe it's like BET Studios, some type of TV production. And she is running the whole room. And they're talking about her in the glass pane right behind the studio switchboards. And Murch is saying, so what's up with you and Jordan? And Harper says, oh, it ain't no thing. We had something in college that almost popped off. We almost slept together, but it didn't happen because we got interrupted. And then they never picked up from there. Yeah. And so I think about that. What are your thoughts? I guess my question is, what are your thoughts on that initial scene? Like him sharing that information with Murch, them kind of reliving the glory days. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I didn't really think much of it at first. It seemed like he wasn't too attached to, I guess, Jordan and what happened in the past. He was just like, oh, this happened back then. And, that was that. It wasn't until like later on that we got to see like through the playback, flashback, whatever, that it was some like feelings there, but he kind of downplayed it a little bit.
He downplayed it a lot of it. And I think that speaks to something that is really interesting. So they meet up, right? Jordan, him, and Murch, and they're all talking. And the way that they're looking at each other, first of all, made me uncomfortable. I was like, I don't like how y'all are looking at each other in her place of work. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot happening here. But we have this conversation. We see that Jordan is still kind of thinking about what Harper could be. And then they move on to my most favorite intro in the entire movie, Quinton. If Quinton is your favorite character, let me know in the chat, because I feel like Quinton is such a stealer of the moment, of the energy when he shows up on the guitar.
Quinton has to be a Scorpio. He has Scorpio energy.
About Zodiac. What does that mean? Like, I don't know anything about the Zodiac. What does that mean? What's a Scorpio like? What's their energy? What is that?
Scorpios can be like free spirits, but like if people keep poking them, like they can be kind of shady. Like they don't really mess with people, but when people mess with them, it's like they just keep going. I got you.
Right. Well, that's the thing, is I feel like he reminds me of like Gretchen Wieners and Mean Girls. Like he holds all the secrets. He knows everybody. He knows everybody's business, and he's just waiting to unveil it at the proper time. And I like the conversation him and Harper have, because if you think about movies, like something I always tell people on the channel is when you're watching movies, if you want to know what a character's character is, if you want to know what kind of person they are, listen to what everybody else says about them. Don't listen to what the character says. Listen to all the other characters. What do they say about the person on screen? Because if you notice, Quinton's first sentiment about Harper when he's sitting across from him at the jazz club, and he says to him, isn't that buttery stuff about being a writer, rewriting history to fit your own idea?
Yeah.
Right?
He read him right then.
Read him to filth.
Right then.
And immediately Quinton has targeted and pinpointed Harper, and Harper says, hey, cut it out. I know where you're going with that. And we see already that Quinton is going to be the antagonist, or really the hero, to Harper's anti-hero. And so I was really excited by Quinton showing up, because I feel like everybody needs a Quinton. Everybody needs somebody that's going to tell you the truth, even if you don't like to hear it.
And Quinton is definitely that. And I think from the moment he did that, from the moment he was like, hey, I see you, then Harper just kept poking and poking and poking. Like, if you know this dude sees you for who you truly are and what you're doing, leave that man alone. He did not leave him alone. He kept poking and poking and poking the whole time.
Absolutely. And I think it's a great lead in, because Harper has now met multiple, we've met multiple characters that kind of revolve around Harper's world. But of course, we have to meet the titular character in Morris Chestnut's Lance Sullivan, the star running back, right? Who comes in, he's got the girls running, he's got the groupies, he's got the pictures. And then of course they show that cross on his neck to say, hey, this is a man of God, just like he's an athlete.
Yeah.
Lance Sullivan coming in. I think, Brittany, I think what I really appreciated about this whole scene, how they introduced each character, which I thought was a real strength of the film and as a whole, and why I think it's well done, is because each person gets their intro. We get a little information about them, and then they're going to build on that information that we learn later in the movie, which is hard to do when you have multiple characters. So when we get to Lance, who's the big man on campus, he kind of has this like aura, right? Everybody is around him. Everybody's attracted to him. He comes in, he kind of hugs everybody up. We learn about who they are to each other. And then we go to Lance's home, a big old home, a mansion, as it were.
Yeah.
And sweet little Mia comes to the top of the stairs with her pearls and her white sweater and her leggings. And she looks down on everyone from her queenly place above.
Pedestal. Yeah.
Her pedestal, honey. And literally, Brittany, what were your thoughts? Like, what did you think about that whole moment, that 90s slow-mo Mia descends the stairs moment?
I think in this scene, they really accentuated, like, okay, this is Mia. Like, this is like the girl of his dream. She's like the goal, the wish, the fantasy. Like, this is that girl. Like, they just really like made that point to have her like come down the staircase slow and then have the camera zoom in. It was just like, okay, so this is Mia. Not Mia, Mia.
Mia, period. And it's funny because when I watched this back, I don't think I remembered how intentional the movie was about making Mia that girl. Like, not only is Lance admiring her from her throne,
but everybody
else is looking up to her too. And it made me realize that of everybody that we've heard gossip about and tea about, Mia's the only one that no one's really spoken a whole lot about. She's very mysterious in that way. It's giving Beyonce. It's giving like nobody.
Yeah, really it is. I'm gonna know all your business, but you're not gonna know mine.
Everybody signed an NDA in the house. Everybody, apparently. So she comes down, she hugs Harper, and Harper's like, "Hey, girl," and they kind of hugged up a little too tight, in my opinion, for someone who's getting married that weekend. And Lance says something curious. He says, I believe he says to her, "I don't know why you love this fool so much," and she says, "Because he's a true friend, and he dedicated his first novel to us."
Which is just wild.
Now, Brittany, at that moment, I was like, now I didn't know, right? Like, if you're watching the movie for the first time, you don't know anything about the book. You don't know necessarily what the book's about. You just know that Harper's trying to keep lids on the book for whatever reason. But you do know that every one of his friends up to this point has been featured in said book. And Mia is saying, oh, he's a true friend, one, and he dedicated the first novel to us, two. She hasn't read the book, but she's
Yeah.
excited by that. And it got me thinking about the fact that he's a true friend. He's a true friend. I want everybody to remember that for later. He's a true
Yeah.
friend.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Mm.
moving right
Okay.
along. Okay.
Okay, Quinton.
I'm going to check in. Look, I'm going to check in on the chat because I'm going to leave that. I'm going to let that hang in the air. Let's
Okay,
see in the
marinate.
chat what's going on. Deshanae says, I can't stand Lance. Grape tea. Thank you very much for the camera quality. It is a Sony A7C. I'm cheating. Not a webcam. A Sony
I know.
A7C. Thank you so much. Nazira's Corner. Hopefully I read that right. Nazira's Corner. Lance was the worst. Oh my God, he pissed me off. Cheating bastard. LOL. Yeah, Lance was rough, and Lance was indeed a hypocrite. We will be talking about that later, Joshua. Thank you so much. I also would say, if you're watching right now, make sure that you like this video. Make sure you thumbs it up. And just so you guys know, me and Brittany both have movie commentary channels, so feel free to subscribe, check out our channels after this, and go find something you like, okay? Because we make the content for y'all. So feel free to find something you like. I think what's interesting, I'm looking at some other comments here just to see if there's anything else. Alicia says they hyped up that perfection complex Lance had for her. Absolutely. Like chatting with friend reviews. Wild. To echo Brittany's thoughts. Wild. I want to move in, Brittany, to one of the, I guess, biggest scenes. I want to talk about a big scene that I think is important before we move on from the men. The card game scene where they're all sitting around playing cards the night of their bachelor, kind of before the bachelor party. That's probably I don't want to say it's my favorite scene, but it's definitely one of my favorite scenes in the movie because I think it highlights so much perspective around how men specifically think about women, about sex, about marriage. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts. Like, what was something that jumped out at you at that scene?
What jumped out at me was Lance's, like, his thoughts about women, like how he thought about women. They should be at home. They should be, taking care of their men, their house or whatever. He didn't think it's like when he mentioned Jordan, he kind of despised the fact that she was independent, that she made good money, that she was career focused. It was like, that's your friend. Like, you're not even trying to date her, but you can't even like congratulate her as a woman for doing her thing, because you feel like all women should be in the home, barefoot and pregnant, taking care of their husbands. Maybe because that's always what he saw, but like that whole, like his whole mindset about women in their place, that really stood out to me.
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to be said around that traditional kind of trad wife view. And I've seen it coming into full view more recently, where people are saying, well, that's where a woman belongs, right? She belongs at home. She belongs in the kitchen. She belongs bearing babies and not much else. And I think what I was really struck by, especially as someone who is married and thought, okay, what would my marriage look like? Like, especially before I got married, I kind of thought through these things. Like, what would it look like? What would be the ideal situation? As a woman, right? I'm not necessarily someone who felt called to being at home and being a stay-at-home mom. Not that there's anything wrong with that. I have lots of friends who are stay-at-home moms and they love it and that's their job and they enjoy it. It's very hard. It's a very difficult job.
Very
but
hard.
They enjoy the work they do. Yeah, it's not easy by any stretch. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to play y'all. I'm not going to hold y'all. It's not easy. But I thought about it and I was like, I don't feel called to that, right? I don't feel specifically in this season, because you can change your mind. It's okay to change your mind. I don't feel called to that. And so when I think about what I was praying about and what I thought my marriage would look like, I was like, okay, God, what do you want for me to do in my marriage and still be in the proper, quote unquote, the proper position, the proper role? Because I still want to be a wife. I'm not trying to be the husband, right? I want to be the wife. So what would you have me do? And what I'm finding is that that's very much a moment by moment activity and not one that you can really plan out from beginning. Of course, as you're dating, you should be talking about, especially if you're going towards marriage, you should be talking about like, hey, this is how I see, this is what I want for my life. Are you in alignment with that? Do you resonate with that? If you want kids and they don't, why are you still with that person? Okay, you see what I'm saying? So like, there's some things that are a little more simple, and then there's things that are done in the work that you do in building the relationship. So I feel like what Lance did was remove the building or the collaboration that his wife could have in their life. It took her voice.
Yes.
And that really upset me, because even if that's what she wants, is to stay home, have his children, cater to the home, and be a homemaker, he didn't give her the option. There was no option. There was no conversation.
He didn't give her the option or the freedom to do more or anything else, or even think to himself that she might want to branch out and have her own thing. He didn't like create that space for her.
0%. And I think sometimes when we think of relationships and marriage, there should be freedom within relationships and marriage. And what I mean by freedom is, I mean that there should be a place where you feel free. You should not be bound or in bondage in relationships, which is a lot of what you see kind of in the culture narrative. And speaking of bondage, I do want to talk about the conversation that they had around, Quinton's more extreme perspective on the polyamory or the open idea of a relationship, right? Because I know there might be people in our audience that also live in that space too. So I want to just address that. What were your thoughts on Quinton's perspective and how he felt that monogamy was really unnecessary and not unnatural for men?
I think that just played into his like free spirit type of character. Like he just go with the flow, whatever he wants to do. If it's, I want to be an artist today, or I want to go back to my dad's business tomorrow. Like he just didn't want to be held down. So there was very much like, I wasn't shocked by that. I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like for him, that just fits his personality.
Right. And I think his personality was kind of encouraging, at least to me, because even if I don't agree with Quinton's perspective that monogamy doesn't work or it doesn't matter for men or for women, whatever, like even if I don't agree with that, I thought what I appreciate about Quinton is that he tells it like it is, right? Like he's not sugarcoating anything for people to feel, like he can tiptoe around their sensibilities. And I appreciate the contrast in the friend group, because you have Lance on one end, you have Quinton on the other end, and you have Murch, who's kind of passively trying to
like in between.
Himself. Yeah, he's trying to find his identity, but he's still not sure of who he is and what kind of person he wants to be. And then you have Harper, the Aaron Burr of the conversation, the blank slate, the one that's, Harper reminds me of Taylor Swift. Here's why. Taylor Swift, what? I'm sorry to the Swifties, but I'm going to come for you. Taylor Swift is a blank slate, honey. Okay? Blank space. That's Taylor Swift.
I was just about to say she had a song called Blank Space.
She had a song, I think, called Blank Space. The reason is because I was thinking about it. I'm like, why do people love Taylor so much? Like, what's going on there? I don't understand it. I think it's because they can project themselves onto Taylor. Taylor she don't have no real offensive opinions. She's just wholesome enough for the young girls, but she's just risky enough for the older women. She's not really stirring any pots. And so she kind of reflects this blank slate that you can put yourself in that position. And I think Harper very much is that. He is a blank slate. And now obviously he has lots of things he's conniving and controlling behind the scenes.
But he doesn't want
Right. Yeah. On the outset, he's not sharing anything. And so you could never pin him into any type of accountability or hole. He's just laughing with the guys. He's going with the flow until Quinton says to him, he says, oh, Quinton's just a BS artist. And Quinton, unprovoked, just calls him out. Like, what is your problem with Quinton? And Quinton says, oh, really? Okay. Oh, really? Period. All right. So now we are at the point in the card game where Quinton now has to deal with Harper. Girl, when he snatched that man up, he snatched him up for even insinuating that Mia had been with somebody else.
Yeah. And Quinton laughed. He was just like, oh, ha, ha, ha. This is funny.
Quinton, that's a scary person to be around. Somebody who does not fear violence. Scary. He would have punched him in the face and he would have laughed. Like, that's how terrifying.
Yeah, he'd have been like, oh, that's all you got?
That's it? Right.
That's it?
And that scene for me showed at the outset that we have a problem. Because not only was Quinton testing the water to see just how far he could go, but now we know that Lance is not happy.
Yeah, about Mia. He does not play about Mia.
Oh, child, let me hop into these comments. Let me see what they're talking about. Taylor Swift, somebody said, I almost spit out my water. Listen, okay? I just have strong feelings about popular culture, and sometimes they come out for no reason. And this is Coach T, my mama. She says Quinton didn't even flinch. That's the scariest part. My man still played his cards. He had his deck of cards talk about whose turn is it. Like, you know,
and then like the camera goes back to Harper, and he's just like shaking in his boots. Okay, like, oh crap.
But then we get the moment in the movie that I love where we find out that Morris Chestnut, aka Lance, has got the book. He's got the copy because Harper's looking for it. He's like, "Where's the copy? Where's the copy?" And Lance has the copy.
Yeah.
Woo! That would have made me go home right then. I don't think I would have stayed because now we know the book has some information that's going to incriminate Harper. And I want to ask you, Brittany, like this is a question because we're going to transition from the men for a moment. We're going to transition to the women. But I want to ask a question in the transition from your personal perspective. When you see this all play out, what are some of the things that come to mind for you as far as the problems, the challenges that could have been avoided in this whole situation?
First of all, he should have never wrote the book. He should have never wrote the book. If he didn't want them to find out, he should have never wrote the book. Why would you write the book about you sleeping with your friend's girl that you know he cried to you about this girl? Like, why would you do that? And then it's like, why would you continue to poke the bear with Quinton knowing that he knows your tea? Like, why would you do that? It was so many things that he did. I can't even name all the things.
I mean, I like this comment from Miss Brandiva. She says, crazy that crazy that Lance did all the cheating. Where are you going?
I'm sorry. Girl, I had charged my computer.
Oh, okay. I was like, where are you at? Crazy that Lance did all that cheating without a care in the world, but the mere thought of Mia cheating sends him in a rage. That's a very good point because I think what it shows us is not only that Lance's anger and his rage, like he sees red and then everything else just kind of goes quiet, which I know people who have anger issues like that. And it's serious, right? They don't see anything else but they're hurt. But I think what it also showed me is that Harper created this scenario for himself. It's almost like he couldn't get out of the author mode. Like in his mind, the greatest tea and the greatest PR for his book would be if he sent his friends into a frenzy. That is a very manipulative thing that people do. I think I read about this somewhere, so I might be misquoting this, but I feel like I read about a phenomenon where someone will create stories for attention, but they will also create drama to appear more interesting than they actually are. And you have extreme versions of this with people who fake illnesses or fake, like cancer or things like that so that they can get attention. But you have more mild versions of this, like a Harper, who's starting to plant seeds of discord and disunity on purpose as a means of having something else to write about. Because as many artists will know, any of my creatives in the audience will know, that many times creativity is often said that you need to be a tortured soul, right? You need to create out of struggle and strife. What if Harper doesn't have any of that? And so he's got to create the drama.
Yeah.
That's my thought. I could be stretching, but that's my thought. So let's move on to the women, Brittany, some of our favorite conversation. We talked about the men. We talked about the manipulation, the cheating, the rage. Let's talk about the women. Starting with, we'll go to Robin at the end. Let's start with Mia. I want to start with Mia. What are your thoughts on Mia?
Mia, oh my God. Mia, they kind of introduced all the other girls, but I feel like Mia was just a mystery. I think Beyonce, how you compare her to Beyonce was perfect because it was just like, I'm going to know all your business, but you're not going to know mine. She was very vague. Even when Jordan asked her about what happened between her and Harper, she was just like, oh, it was just as enduring as a forehead kiss. I'm like, girl, did y'all have sex or not? Like she was very keeping her secrets close.
Right.
She was very tight. So yeah. She had tea, but she didn't want anybody to know.
Right, right. And I think that's a good question because I think Mia kind of speaks to the perspective of really what Mia was an ideal, right? She kind of lost any real personhood because I think not just Lance, I think a lot of people probably put Mia in a box, on a pedestal, on a stand that was untouchable.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, I think a couple things happened. I think one, Mia internalized those feelings of perfection and maybe even operated from a place of I have to be perfect. I have to be poised. I
Yeah.
have to be put together. So
Mm-hmm.
Mia doesn't even have an option to be falling apart. She doesn't have an option to be, not perfect because that would ruin the illusion. But then
Yes.
second, what I think happened with Mia is I think Mia was also experiencing that female rage, which was how unfair the situation she was in. Her boyfriend at the time when they were in college is the all-star running back. He's big man on campus. He can do no wrong in no one's eyes, and yet he's
Mm-hmm.
cheating all over the place on Mia. And every girl around her, maybe even her family, is encouraging her to stick it out because he just might be in the league someday. And
Oh
you
yeah.
can't ruin your golden goose by having feelings. Honey, that's just a
Yeah.
man. That's just a man being a
That's
man.
what they do. Oh, I hate when people say that.
That's what they do. By the way, Brittany, I think your video is actually stopping. So if you can check on your connection, I think your connection might be slow.
Okay.
It looks like the Wi-Fi might just be. If you have anything else open, just try closing it. While you do
Okay.
that, I will talk for a little bit more. I was gonna say too, I think that when people say things like that's just a man being a man, I feel like what they're missing in that is the accountability that we often talk about. And so you have this whole like he's a good man, Savannah. You have that perspective, but what is a good man if he's not willing to have integrity in his relationship and he's not willing to be faithful to the agreement that they made? And I think Mia felt trapped. And so rather than throw away the relationship and rather than, leave or go find something else, she basically drew a line in the sand and said, I'm going to stay here because there's benefit to me here. And I think he loves me and I love him. But I'm also going to have to accept a certain level of disrespect to maintain this relationship. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Is my video
Yeah.
better?
Yes, it is.
Is
It is better.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. So go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh no, I wasn't going to say anything. I was just making sure you heard me. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I can hear you, but your video is still slow. So I would just, like I said, close any tabs you
What?
have. Sorry, guys. We just want to make sure there's technical. It is live. If you were wondering, this is a live recording. Close any tabs you might have. I would also like if you have any systems sucking up internet. Sometimes that happens too. But also,
Mhm.
guys, let us know if you guys can hear and see us okay, because it might just be me and her video might be fine. But I will go to some of these comments to see what's going on. So I see that it says, do you think that Mia chose Harper instead of any random man because it would hurt Lance and make him feel the type of hurt she was feeling? What do you think, Britt?
Yeah, I think she chose Harper on purpose because it wouldn't be enough to cheat on him with a random guy. I think he would still be hurt, but he'll like get over it. But it's the fact that it's his friend. Like you got to see it from her point of view. Her point of view. She's been cheated on a million times by this man ever since they've been together, pretty much. So, like, she can't cheat on him a million times, but she can cheat on him one time and make it hurt, and that's why she chose Harper.
And
Because that's
I
gonna
do
always
think, right. I was just gonna say, I do feel like what that speaks to, I think, is if you're gonna cheat on someone as a tit for tat, right? Because really, we know that for Mia in this moment when she's talking to Jordan in the mirror and she's saying, what we shared was beautiful, it's what I wanted, it's what I needed. And then going back to what I said at the beginning, when she said, he's a true friend. He's a true friend. I don't know about y'all, but I don't have that many friends. Matter of fact, I don't have any friends that treat me like that. Okay. I don't have any friends that are doing sexual favors to try to get me to a certain place. And so I think when she did that, and what she did was kind of implant a psychological ticking time bomb that now is going to blow up the weekend of their wedding. And to me, that speaks to how is it that you got to your wedding day and you never told your husband to be that you slept with his best man?
I'm gonna try.
Yeah, Brittany, I still have your video still lagging, so I'm not sure if I have to send. You can leave and come back if you want and see if that fixes it.
Yeah, let me try to do that.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Come right back. I'm gonna take some comments and we'll wait for you to come back. So I want to say first things first, thank you guys for being here and thanks for being on the live. I love doing this type of work with movies because I think the context is so interesting. And I want to go to the comments to see what you guys are saying about this. So bear with me as I pull some of these out. It says somebody said, I agree 100%. Also, Julian says she needed Lance to change his behavior. And I'm assuming you're talking about Mia. And I think that's always an interesting thing, right? If someone is trying to get the proper result out of a relationship or a marriage, they'll tell you in like therapy, right? Couples therapy, things like that you can't change anyone. Okay, that's a losing battle. You cannot change anyone other than yourself. You cannot change anyone, and you can't control anyone. You can't inspire anyone to change. And I think sometimes we think that we are the exception to the rule. At least I know I used to have this perspective that we think we're the exception to the rule. Well, they'll change for me, but we don't realize that that is not ever supposed to be your job. You were never supposed to be burdened with someone else's transformation. You can't save anybody else. So I think to your point, Julian, that's a really good point. I like how you guys are talking about the best man holiday. Maybe we'll do a follow-up video or live on future sequels. But you said he mentioned that the best man holiday that you chose him. So I see that everybody is into that. Absolutely. If it came out, it'd be more devastating. And I think this is weird to me in the movie that Mia was willing to take this all the way past the union, past the ceremony. Like only two things in my mind could have happened. Either one, she felt like it wasn't going to help the situation. They wouldn't stay together if she told him about cheating or about sleeping with Harper. And I understand that. But if you guys are willing to do that on one another and you're not willing to tell the truth about it, I don't think there's a relationship there that's worth having. But secondly, I think that she thought that if she would tell him eventually, just not before they got married. It's almost like Mia had a plan to kind of secure the bag in a way. Not even just like his contract, but I mean secure like her future, which maybe that's how she was raised, right? Maybe it was raised that her upbringing, her parents kind of told her, you know, she needed to be back in. Oh, it looks like Brittany is back. Fantastic. Welcome in. We're going to see if your camera pops up here. It's still glitching, Britt.
Oh, why is it glitching?
Yeah, I don't see any. I don't see you. I see a blank screen, which I love talking to, but I don't see you on camera. If you want to, you can always switch to your phone too. That might work as well. Oh, I don't think she's there anymore. I'm gonna wait for her to come back. Okay, so looking back at this, let's see what other benefits are there. Harper ain't a true friend. I don't think so, Sharon. I don't think that that's friendship, and I feel like there has to be another way to reframe the history there, because that's actually really concerning. Let's see. I'm going to look at Brittany's camera and see if she's able to come back in. You're still frozen, friend, but I'll bring you back as soon as you get into it. Cool. Let's talk about Jordan for a little bit, because I do want to discuss her ever so slightly. So Jordan is interesting to me. And you said Lance looked at Harper as a brother. The relationship was much deeper than just friends. She knew what she was doing. Yeah, I think that's the most sinister part of this whole thing, is that it feels like the wounds are so much deeper because everybody in the situation is operating they're operating within this friend group as if they don't care about each other at all. I don't know what it's like to have this type of toxicity kind of permeating a group, but I imagine there's a couple of things that went down. For one, these are all college friends. So maybe in their minds, they were like, okay, This is college. We're just bringing that college relationship into our adult lives. And sometimes you can't do that. Some people are better left in the season that you had them. And you don't want to bring them into the present because they haven't grown to that point. I think it's really a lesson for all of us in friendship, because God knows friends and friendships are hard. And so I think that can be really, really difficult in that way. But I want to talk about Jordan for a second. What are you guys' thoughts about Jordan? Why is it that Jordan, who is the Olivia Pope of this film, she is put together, she is ambitious, she is hungry. Why is it that she seems to be there? Oh, you're there. Don't be sorry. But I think that you have to exit the other one to make sure that the audio doesn't repeat. And then once you do that, we'll go ahead and unmute you. Hello?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Oh, we love it. You are here. Okay. I can see you. I can hear you. Welcome in. Do you want to talk about Jordan for the next piece?
I can hardly hear you, though. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No worries. Let's see. I'll try to fix it for you. So look at your mic settings and check out if there's any issues there. And I'll keep talking while you do that. So
Okay.
Jordan, as the ambitious and I guess the put together one, I feel like I was really struggling with her because she is kind of giving independent Black woman, right? Strong Black woman who don't need no man. And they even call her out in the card game scene. They keep saying like, oh, Jordan is not the one because she doesn't need a man. And they kind of look down on her for being this kind of put together, strong Black woman trope. But I think what we kind of overlook with Jordan in particular is that Jordan has been holding a flame for Harper for like 7 years. She has no other prospects that we know of, or no other prospects that measured up to Harper in her mind. And so she has been staying still, waiting for this man to see her. And he's moved on and had multiple relationships without her. Now there's something that hurts my heart about that, because I do feel like, and men, forgive me, I'm going to go with the single Black women for a moment, but I will come back to you in just a second. Single Black women, shout me out in the comments. I wonder sometimes if we in our dating feel like there isn't room for us to be quote unquote soft and to not be the rescuers in relationships, because many of us, especially in our Black woman historyness, have felt like we've had to shoulder the world. We've had to shoulder our families. We've had to shoulder our children. We've had to shoulder our spouses. And Brittany, let me know, can you hear me okay now? No?
It's very low. I don't know why, but it's very low.
Let me see. I'm going to turn up my volume. You let me know. Let me see if I can turn up my volume for you. And you guys hold for just a second while I do that so I can see if she can hear me. How about, as I turn up the gain, how about now? Can you hear me okay? Anything?
It's still the same.
Okay.
It's like I can hear you, but I'm going to have to pay really close attention. So I'm sorry, y'all.
No, don't worry. Don't worry. It happens. Not a big deal. Do you want to put headphones in and see if that helps it?
I'll be right back.
Okay. Take your time. So, Jordan, that's what I was saying, right? Jordan, I think that sometimes we feel like we have to be rescuers in relationships. And I'm even learning this, by the way, like transparent moment. I'm also learning this in marriage, that struggle to let go of control doesn't stop. And if you're not diligent with it and you don't actually put the work in to stop trying to rescue everyone or stop with your own God complex, that'll keep permeating every single relationship you have. And so what I think with Jordan that's interesting is that Jordan, I felt like she always was the one in control, the one that was professional, the one that was able to take care of herself, probably because in her childhood, she was taking care of herself. She didn't rely on anyone, man or anybody else. And I wonder sometimes if we don't kind of mimic that same behavior in our own lives. Oh, hello, camera's falling. That we don't actually mimic that behavior in our own lives, that we don't mimic trying to, I guess, be ahead of the curve so no one can beat us to the punch. And I would love to know, I want to see what you guys are saying about it. Joshua says, I like Jordan And she was like a lot of successful women. She struggled to find a balance between career and personal. She didn't need a man, but she wanted one. I think that's interesting. And I completely hear that, because there is that balance that we're constantly trying to find. I see that Nazira says, I hated how they clowned Jordan for not having a man. This is something that we see in culture a lot, right? Like, I don't know, y'all watch podcasts and things like that. I notice sometimes that there's a lot of conversation specifically around Black women and men, where there's this constant fight of Black women are the problem. And then Black women will turn around and say, Black men are the problem. And I don't think anyone's stopping to say, maybe this condition that we have found ourselves in is less about Black women or Black men being the problem and more about a cultural conversation around relationships, marriage, commitment, accountability that actually goes way deeper than just a skin deep issue. And I'm saying that, I want to read more of these comments. I'm saying that in light of the fact that I think Jordan was a tragedy in this movie because she got nothing. She ends the movie. She learned a lesson, I hope, but she ends the movie with nothing. Not even sloppy seconds to Mia. She doesn't end the movie with a relationship or a support system. She ends the movie how she started it, alone. Jordan created the illusion of being put together, but she was broken. Oh, Lord, isn't that everybody's testimony? Wasn't that my testimony? That's the question. You know what I'm saying? The illusion of being put together, but you're broken. I also like this comment. I feel like Jordan has the trope of a woman who is everything but a man, and that's what she desires most. It's like a woman. It's like a woman in every Tyler Perry film. Come on, Terrell. Why are we going to talk about Tyler Perry? I feel like I'm becoming the Tyler Perry channel of like just bashing all of his movies, but you're not wrong. You're telling the truth. And I think the reason that this trope exists, the strong Black woman archetype, right? Let's talk about it. Let's break it down. Going back to history, little history lesson, going back to slavery. There was a time where families were broken up in the Black community, obviously because slavery, and people were property. They were treated as property, enslaved human beings treated as property. And so there was a separation that was happening. And they would separate families intentionally for the purpose of keeping them from grouping up and running away, right? Or keeping them from forming these strong bonds. Because if they have strong bonds, if the children have strong bonds to the mother, and the mother has a strong bond to the husband, and the husband has a strong bond to the children, then what happens is when you're trying to sell them off or punish them, whatever, you have to sever multiple unity points. It's harder to sell someone downriver when they're connected to a family unit and they're attached and they're not going to go willingly and they might escape. You see what I'm saying? So that's there. That's that thing. But on the next thing, I'm going to see, it looks like somebody might be in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and I gotta clean up the chat a little bit. That's the history of that. That's way back when. That's the history, not that far ago, but that's history. But then we come into present day and we're looking at the lineage of families, and I'm skipping over a lot of history here, but when we look at marriages in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and we're seeing that there's a lot of discourse around what marriage truly is. And is it commitment by any means necessary? We're talking about domestic violence. We're talking about philandry. Not philandry. That's not a word, is it? We're talking about cheating and philandering and going all around and having families on multiple sides of town. We're talking about issues from war, right? Vietnam and all these people coming back and having all these mental health issues and PTSD, and now not feeling competent and adequate. Added on top of the fact that as a Black man or a Black woman, you are at the bottom of the totem pole in society. And so you're struggling with those issues. And so you have all of that trauma couched in relationships. And you're really just, I think there's a lot to be said about why there is so much brokenness in relationships and connections today. And I often think about this when I look at movies like a Jordan or like a Mia. You have two sides of the spectrum with them too, just like Quinton and Lance. You have Jordan, who's gone after the American dream, and you've got Mia,